Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for December 4th. So this week I'm titling Stay on Your Game because this week we may experience some delays, maybe even some frustrations. We are in the period of Mercury retrograde and some other things as well. So I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you because I also have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So firstly, what we have happening earlier in the week is we have Mars making an aspect to Saturn. And so this may be a bit of that maybe frustration, or we could also look at it as where we need to apply effort to something, because Mars is the planet that represents self-assertion and putting up boundaries and like really wanting to take action towards something. Mars is action. And then Saturn is where we need to put in the effort, we need to put in the time, where we need to be devoted to something. And so very often, because of this, Saturn is also related to restriction and delays. And so there may be something where we benefit, and this, again, I see this as not necessarily this piece like a delay, but it's more like we need to put in effort towards something. And so wherever we put our effort, there will be a reward when we do so, that we'll actually get a lot more out of something if we put in the time and the dedication and the effort towards it. The other piece of this week as well is that, so we're still in the period of Mercury retrograde for another 2 weeks or so, and Mercury retrograde is a time of reviewing. It's a time of rethinking, reprocessing, going back over situations and projects and things that you've been working on, in this case since about like August, September. So anything that new that has come about, or anything that you've really been working on, maybe it's time to retool things. And this is also related to possibly delays and really needing to put in the time and effort, because Mercury will be making aspects to Saturn, Uranus, and Mars. And so, holy moly. So Saturn is, again, that, that sense of devotion and really being in it for the long game. Uranus is about innovation and new ideas and doing things differently. And then Mars, again, is about that action and assertiveness, and also setting boundaries as well. So all of these things may be coming up. And what this could look like at a practical level is maybe there's a project that you've been working on, maybe there's a service that you offer, maybe there is like a website that you have, or a project that you've been writing, like anything like that. Maybe there's a different way, like maybe things need to be revised or updated in some way. And so I would think about that. I don't know, maybe none of those examples apply to you. Maybe you're just like thinking about big picture life stuff as well. That's a good time for this as well. So, so that's that piece. And then, as if all of that wasn't enough, this weekend we have Venus making an aspect to Neptune. So Venus is relationships, it's also love and beauty and aesthetics and even sex as well, because Venus talks about what it is that we're attracted to, what we find alluring and beautiful and soothing. And then Neptune is related to spirituality and spiritual connection, meditation, but it's also, and creativity, but it's also related to where we can tend to be confused about something, where things feel a bit uncertain or unclear. And so, so what this means is that we may be like reconsidering how our relationship ideals fit in with our relationship reality, and the people that we surround ourselves with, Venus, like what are the quality of our relationships, how do we feel about it, do things feel a bit ambiguous in some certain ways, or maybe we feel that a relationship should be a certain way, and is that actually working out to be the case, and kind of like making peace with that in a certain way. And so so this is primarily happening over the weekend, so I don't necessarily see it as something where you need to do anything necessarily about a relationship, but I would just notice how it is that you're feeling, and it's more of an internal process of again, like making making peace with what your ideal is and then what is actually happening. And then of course, if you need to do something or have conversations to try and reconcile that. But I do feel like it's more of like an inner contemplation and making peace with yourself versus doing something on the outside. So I don't know, let me know how that goes for you this weekend. That being said, I have 3 tips for you to really make the most of this week. So tip number 1 is I want you to keep a curious mindset this week, especially when it comes to problems or delays, because Mercury is the mind, it's the thought process. So we're reviewing things during Mercury retrograde. There can be, it's known for a time when there's delays, or maybe we need to like not necessarily move forward, we need to go back and revise things. And so this is all for a reason too. It's not just that like life sucks, you know, it's like we need to go back and do things for a reason. Sometimes we need to get it right. And so if there is a delay, it's really helpful if we have a curious mindset, because it helps us to problem solve much more quickly and we take things less personally, which just feels a lot better as well. So that's tip number 1, to keep a curious mindset during this week. Tip number 2 is to allow extra time for everything. So if you are submitting a document or paperwork, or if you're planning something, like if you're planning a project or an event, or if you're even just going on a trip, allow yourself some wiggle room for if there is a delay. You know, plan for traffic, plan for, like basically plan for like Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it quite possibly may go wrong. So this is again like a Mercury retrograde thing. It just, number 1, it helps us to plan and to prepare when there are delays, which it's possible during this time. And also it just like frees up time for us to be less stressful. I don't know about you, but I plan my day like back to back to back to back, and I am always doing something. And so I find when I allow extra time, then I'm actually less stressed because I don't have to rush through my day. So this is actually something that's good for any time, but especially this week. So that's tip number 2, is to allow extra time for everything. And then before I share with you tip number 3, I have a quote that I want to share with you. So this is by Marie Forleo. And if you don't know Marie Forleo, she's an amazing woman. She's a life coach and a speaker and a writer. She's been on Oprah's Soul Sunday, and she's just really inspiring and like very practical and very fun. She is the person that we're featuring on the Feminine Principle podcast for this week's episode. So she says, to be responsible, keep your promises to others. To be successful, keep your promises to yourself. And so I like this a lot for this whole week, because we may be working through like, where do we keep our commitments? Where do we keep our promises? What does that mean? And there may be like this tension, especially over the weekend when we have this Venus-Neptune, where it's like we've committed to something, we've committed to someone, we've said that we would do something, and then maybe it doesn't feel right, or maybe we need to change things. And you know, how do you process that? Like when is it okay to say no? When is it okay to change a commitment? And I think that this quote really speaks to that, is that if it's, you know, if it's keeping a promise to yourself, that ultimately needs to come first. And that's not to say that we should not honor our commitments, but I find that, at least for myself, when I am continuing as like a practice to keep promises to others, and then that requires that I break promises to myself, especially like if I'm doing something and I'm doing activities and then I'm letting go of my self-care and things like that, that is letting go of a promise to myself. And so yeah, just something to notice, something to pay attention to this week as we're reviewing commitments and projects and things. So All of that being said, I know that was a lot of information. Tip number 3 is to do something creative this weekend, so a little bit lighter. And I say that, do something creative or even artistic this weekend because this Venus-Neptune that's happening this weekend, it's a great aspect for creative work and for any kind of artistic work or anything where you're just kind of like letting your mind wander and letting your daydreaming kind of self come out. So that's tip number 3, to do something creative or artistic this weekend. So that is your horoscope for the week. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend because I love to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And yeah, if you want to go deeper into the astrology of this week, much more than I can do in this video, you can listen to the Feminine Principle podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. It's called The Feminine Principle, Astrology for Authentic Living. And you can listen on iTunes, Podbean, or YouTube. I'll have links for all of that below so that you can listen to that. It is super fun. And if you want more support as well, you can contact me about a reading or counseling. I'll have information below on how to get in touch with me on that. And lastly, but certainly not least, I still have the 2018 Moon Journal available. So that is a moon journal that I've written specifically for the year of 2018. It has reflection questions and quotes and action items for every single new moon and every single full moon the entire year, and some other fun stuff too. So I will have the link below so that you can order that on Etsy. I'm super excited about it, and I will only be selling it through the end of this year. So if you want one, put in your order now because I most likely won't be selling it after the first of the year. So, oh, and I have it spiral bound version and PDF as well. So yeah, so that's all for today. I'm wishing you an amazing week and sending lots of love. I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.